Everyone's going to have a different value across the different clouds, but the better that you align on that and report on that, the more support you're going to get to try to go do more unique things as you do the corporate development and product alignment pieces.
Welcome to Unlock Cloud Go-to-Market, the series where hosts Aaron Feiger and Patrick Riley share the essential stages of the cloud GTM maturity model to start, optimize, and grow your company's revenue through the cloud. They've helped countless ISVs tackle the ins and outs of their cloud GTM motion. And in each episode, they're sharing those success stories from the people who have put them into place. Because ultimately, this way of thinking is the future, and the future is now.
In this episode of Unlock Cloud Go-to-Market, we interviewed Boone Quesnel at Starburst. He shares with us how he is seeing 2 times the deal size and the deals are closing 2 times faster by implementing his 3-pillar approach to unlocking his cloud go-to-market strategy. Stay tuned to learn more about his experience and what those pillars are. Hi, Boone. Welcome to the Unlock Cloud GTM podcast. Thanks for coming today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So today we're here to talk about cloud alliances, where they are and where they're going. And Boone's joining us from Starburst, formerly of Rubrik. But Boone, could you give us an overview of just kind of who you are and your professional career?
My whole career started out in the VAR world, selling boxes into data centers, all that kind of fun stuff. And then got the opportunity to go over to ServiceNow right after they went public and learn, the true enterprise sales motions that they had and what this whole cloud thing was all about. Obviously, they have their own cloud, but it kind of gave you a view into the world of where things were going, and then got the opportunity to then go to Rubrik and start to build my cloud alliances background that I have now, and then ended up at Starburst to do it again.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to talk to you more about those experiences, but first we kind of just want to tee up. So for those of you that are new to the podcast, we are here to talk about unlocking your cloud go-to-market strategies. And as part of that, Tackle looks at all of our different ISVs with a lens of maturity. And so we've got our cloud go-to-market maturity model, and we have 4 different stages of maturity. We base these stages on a couple categories: people, processes, technology, and cloud alliances. And so we break up customers into these different bands, and we look at them through the stages of establishing foundation, to building adoption, to driving adoption, and to scaling adoption. And so today we're going to pick apart some of those stages of maturity and where Boone has seen success and overcome some challenges in each of those different stages. And we'll call those out as we go through. That's kind of how our maturity model works and how we're thinking about the conversation today.
All right, Boone, let's dive into the foundational pillars of cloud alliances and how to effectively navigate them. You've had extensive experience from Rubrik and now at Starburst. So let's unpack some of your key strategies. When setting up a cloud alliance strategy, what are the foundational pillars that you focus on?
Pillars is the right way to think about it because they are discretely different, but they all build on to the foundation that you're going to go, unlock the new markets with. And so we think about them, or I've thought about them across programs. So the things that everyone's familiar with, from co-sell to marketplace to marketing, all the things you got to be really good at inside of the cloud ecosystem to get their attention. And then product, and we're going to go deeper into each of these. Product alignment. So what is the strategy for your company, and how do you go take what you've built with the programs to go unlock access and different kind of unique things? And then corporate development. And this is where like my sales background probably comes in the most, is just doing the programs and connecting the product is really cool. And it's obviously foundational to what you do. But if you're not trying to get to the higher level or unlock new use cases and do things that are a little bit different than traditional, then I think you're leaving some things on the table. And so we strive to kind of operate across those 3 pillars.
I like that. You have like program execution, product alignment, and corporate development. What do you have to get good at first in order to get on the cloud partners' radar and begin to unlock that opportunity to have a seat at the table? Where do you start?
As long as a product has been built on the cloud, most of the time that is what's happening, right? In the ecosystem we all live in, people are building SaaS applications on the clouds, right? So the most important things after that is going to be the programmatic pieces of it, the co-sell, marketplace, And then how do you tie those things into the marketing campaigns both you had, and then you can start to get access to things like MBF and stuff like that. And so that's the scoreboard. And 5 years ago when I was at Rubrik, it was very co-sell heavy. We've seen a shift in the market to more marketplace. They're still both very important, but just understanding how you're scored and what programs you need to invest into to be able to go to the next stage is the way that I think about it.
It's not even like a shift, it's an and. There was only co-sell in the beginning, and now there's marketplace. So now it's co-sell and marketplace, both things helping you get on that cloud partner's radar so that you can start to have a seat at the table.
Co-sell was always cool. You could always get access to the right Microsoft sellers, AWS sellers, Google sellers, but they didn't have like a tangible thing to march you to help you with. That wasn't just like getting your own paper side. Now that there's marketplace and they have marketplace specialist overlays, and the things Tackle helps us get access to in those teams because they're so well connected across all the ISVs you guys work with, actually gives you like a finite thing to work towards together.
And the ability to build a more well-rounded route to market now with the cloud partner.
Yeah, and ultimately they have some stake in it. They may need to help that customer do it because it's their first time or it's a new person in procurement.
Speaking of co-sell and marketplace, in the program execution pillar you talked about, what kind of lift did you get and what kind of support did you get and from whom within that pillar when you think about doing those co-sell activities and starting those marketplace activities? What did that look like for you all?
Prior to Starburst, myself and then another gentleman who actually started the cloud stuff here at Starburst before me, Harrison Johnson, worked at Nasuni. We knew it was important to get co-sell right and marketplace up and running fast. And so between he and myself 4 years ago, we decided to get the co-sell motion going in conjunction at the same time as marketplace. That seemed to be the most important piece, and leveraging Tackle both from a marketplace, get our listings up and running quickly. Back in the day, Google wasn't as easy as it is today to get up and running. And so that was a huge piece. And then also like have the co-sell stuff automated.
Did you see any time to market differences early on in that kind of establishing foundation building adoption phase in that program execution around like, hey, were we closing deals any faster with marketplace than we were direct? How did that look?
One is we saw deals get done that wouldn't have happened. So it's hard to quantify the data back 3-4 years ago for us. We've looked what was closed faster back then, but we did know and we did track deals that would not have happened without the marketplace. So there's a chunk of revenue we just wouldn't have today as a company if we didn't do it. Since then, we did start tracking data. So more towards 3-4 years in on our side, we did see if you surround your deals with partners doing co-sell and marketplace and all the right things, you're going to do deals 2 times bigger, 2 times faster. That actually includes for us, not just cloud co-sell, but also co-sell with SIs and other ISVs.
We get a lot of good feedback from customers around their growth rates, and we try very much now to help track that through our benchmarking and baselining with customers. But seeing kind of that 200% increase is quite a feat. So that's a great accolade to have.
We automate that process with cloud co-sell. Do you have an SI and do you have an ISV surrounding your deal? So it's like grown from just cloud to a much bigger kind of piece of the puzzle.
In the beginning, you were laser focused as well as getting this all operational inside of Salesforce. Those fundamental elements are so crucial, but so is the execution side of the house. So can you elaborate on a specific challenge? Like we always talk about like all the good stuff, right? Like, oh, it's good, it's good. But we also learn from our mistakes or we learn from the things that challenge us. What were some of the challenges that you faced and how did Tackle help you overcome it?
We did early on integrate our cloud co-sell processes with Tackle co-sell into our Salesforce process. So we're a very simple sales process company. We have 4 stages. If you try to move your deal from stage 1 as a seller to stage 2, we require you to pick which cloud, if not multiple, to share it with, right? Then that sets off the automated process that we all do together. What we did see though was people would just mark no, not because they didn't want to talk to the cloud, they just didn't want to talk to the cloud yet. And so we started to see a ballooning of no's in our S2 pipeline. It took us back. Maybe we were a year and a half in, new salespeople have come on. Maybe we didn't train them enough to understand why we're doing this and when we're doing this, right? And so the feedback we started to get was it just felt too soon. I didn't understand it. So we had to scrub that data with the tackle team, go back through and do a round of enablement. And so now we do enablement about every other quarter just to make sure all the new reps at a fast growing company understand the why we do this and that it's not sharing proprietary data. There's a very controlled way that we share data, and they're the ones that get to share, the special sauce once they get on the phone with the cloud sellers. We have a really cool automation process, and then we created our own problem by not enabling.
You're not alone. I mean, so many times when someone will say, hey, can you talk to this ISV? They're struggling. And so I'll get on the phone and I'll start to talk to them. And one of the first things I ask them is like, well, what have you done around initial enablement? And what are you doing around your ongoing enablement? That's the part, like they executed their initial enablement, but then didn't execute an ongoing, always continually enabling. And I think that's one of like the dirty secrets about cloud alliance partnerships. And this as a route to market is like, you are signing up as an alliance person, like you are signing up for constant enablement. It's never done. It's always evolving. It's always changing. You always need to enable. And just when you think you have everyone enabled, new sellers come into the org, those sellers leave the org, and now you've got to do it all over again, right? So enablement never goes away. And I haven't seen a job description recently of a Cloud Alliance person, but I really hope that people are putting in enablement and ongoing enablement in that job description.
They're doing a great job doing it. So
yeah,
I guess they have great skills.
As a startup, you were a small, lean machine in the beginning days. So really banking on Tackle and our team of folks to be an extension of your team. And you've since grown that team, but we're growing there right alongside of you.
You could either hire people and build automation yourself, or there's vendors like Tackle that are an extension of your workbench. And ultimately, they have people that live and breathe this all day instead of a quarter of a person or a half of a person in sales or business ops trying to remember what they did last week when they pulled this report. This is a much more seamless way when we leverage Tackle, and we see that not having to add headcount on our side and things like that.
Yeah, that's how I used it too. I leaned very heavily on my Tackle resources when I had hired them before I came here. So I get it. From the operations perspective and the enablement perspective, like none of that happens overnight. It definitely takes time, and the strategy has to get rolling before you can start to get some real momentum. And from a cloud provider perspective, like getting their attention is one thing, but then just as we have to do with the sales reps and enablement, we've got to keep their attention as well. And so in order to keep that, we have to constantly be realigning with the things that matter to them. Right now it's AI. Do we have mutual AI customers? A year or two from now, who knows what it's going to be, but we have to always align with what they're focused on to keep doing that.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And then they'll do a reorg, right? Like we saw AWS do this last year on their partner organization. Then you're remapping everything, right? So that's where the sales intuition of understanding when changes happen, or how do you go make sure you're talking to the right people and you're promoting yourself appropriately, is a big piece of what you have to do in the cloud alliances.
I think that's one of the things that you've done really well at Starburst, and your lessons you learned over at Rubrik and kind of bringing that over and getting a chance to do it again, is that when you partner with the clouds, they change often, they change their priorities often, and you've really got to constantly be aligning to the metrics that matter and to their priorities and even to their products. What have been some of the things, like you started one way at Starburst and you've seen that shift and you guys are constantly shifting and aligning?
Yeah, it's actually cross company. So I saw a huge change when we were at Rubrik, and I think you're going to talk with Shane at some point in this podcast series. So he'll go into way more detail. He's kind of my mentor, and I work for him at Rubrik. But we were super deep with Microsoft, doing some pretty cool things. And as we've seen, Rubrik has now gone public, and had an investment from Microsoft before that happened. And so the big learning for me was when I shifted to Starburst, they didn't have the same product gap in the data analytics space that Starburst operates in that they had in the backup data management space that Rubrik operated in. And so like for me, it was kind of like, oh, it's just going to be wash, rinse, and repeat. We'll go do the same things with Microsoft, but it's different, right? Because they have different priorities on that side of the house, and they have a whole different product set, where AWS was the opposite. It was hard to break into that infrastructure backup world at AWS. Rubrik has obviously done that now, but I just remember when I came over to Starburst, it was so much easier to get access to people at AWS than it ever was at Rubrik. And it's just finding where you fit each cloud is super important because they're all different, especially depending on the services that they have on their side of the fence. And so I'd say that is the biggest learning I've had from like when things shift around.
Well, Boone, we talked a lot about kind of setting ourselves up with establishing our foundation, but part of that outside of the operational piece, and you mentioned a little bit here, was product. That product alignment is definitely vital. What approach did you all use to ensure that your product roadmap aligned with their priorities? And how did you keep that kind of continuity of business going?
Yeah, it's definitely got to have the programmatic things we just talked about in order to be able to have a seat at the table. So
Yep.
that's like the importance of like the first pillar does come first in this kind of concept. The second pillar is super important to understand your own product leadership and team strategy and roadmap, and then go find places you can help accelerate that on the cloud side. That's also going to give the cloud a win. For us, we are a analytics compute engine. We drive a lot of compute consumption. And so for us to look at how do we make our product more efficient for our joint customers, we worked with the compute teams at AWS, EKS, and things like that to find the right architecture to run the best solution together. And that's a collaboration. That's not just us saying, hey, we're going to go build on this type of processor or whatever. It's access to processors early in the process, being able to test it and be able to be a launch partner in this type of a scenario. So super important to drive the best in class service on your side in conjunction with their services together. And you get promoted for that, right? When you're a launch partner for something like Graviton, you're going to get promoted as one of those launch partners at reInvent. It's not just product for product's sake, it's product, and then it spins out into a GTM motion that you can leverage as well.
I think that's an area that a lot of ISVs miss is this foundational product alignment and continuing to align. So we don't see that all the time, but we do see it in the successful ones. So it's refreshing to hear that this is an important pillar, an important strategy.
Back to the foundational pillar of program execution. Without that, we don't get access to these people. And so it's a little bit of you have to build the cart before you can pull it with the horse, but you got to build the cart because they do look at the scoreboard, right? If you ping a product leader, they're going to look at the same scoreboard as seller does. These guys don't share very many deals. They don't do much marketplace. What are we doing?
How are you like maintaining that momentum and keeping your team aligned and like keeping everybody engaged and continuing to evolve that strategy?
Continuous enablement externally, right? So we talk about internal enablement to our teams. We are always finding new product teams and leaders to go enable on what we're doing. A good example of this last year was enabling the QuickSight product team. I think it was at reInvent, 2 reInvents ago, actually, where we are to open source Trino, the commercial version here at Starburst. They had been building a Trino connector, but then we showed them the value of what building a Starburst connector would provide to our joint customers. And they built a connector on their side. So without enabling them on what is different, sometimes it's a open source versus commercial offering difference. How are we different than their own services? You know, what are the use cases that make sense? And some of these product teams will lean in and build things. We see the same with Google and GDC, right? We have the ability to do hybrid analytics and Google sees a ton of value in that.
What I'm hearing from you is that it's truly a multifaceted approach. It involves a collection of initiatives and activities that you have to do over a long period of time. And that it's not just, I put a listing out there, I shared a few deals, I talked to this one area of the product, or we built our product initially this way. It's that you're constantly talking to lots of different teams, trying to get connected in a lot of different ways. You're continuing to evolve the product and align it with more use cases and more of the cloud's products, not just one area. And that you're doing this consistently over a long period of time. You said 3-4 years now that you have been at Starburst. Like, you're still doing this. It's like Simon Sinek has the infinite game. When I read that book, I was like, cloud alliances and a route to market with the cloud partnerships, you are signing up for an infinite game. It's always going, you're always evolving it. There's no winning and losing. There's just like, I'm going to opt in or I'm going to opt out.
Yeah, and I think I didn't bring up AI first, Patrick did. And so you have to think about things in a totally different lens that you hadn't been thinking about for 3 years. And so just being nimble on your feet, not getting stuck flat-footed is super important.
Well, you had a third pillar, which was corporate development and new routes to market. Beyond co-selling and marketplace, what other routes to market have you explored through your corporate development initiatives?
The way I look at these in corp development as the third pillar is now you have all the programs executing. Anyone that looks at your dashboard, they're going to be happy with where you're at as a partner, given your size and relevance in the market. And then you have product humming along, making sure you're providing the best service you can. And then from there, how do you build on top of that? How do you create new routes to market? Typically that starts with joint solutions. Maybe it's not like a product build solution. It's more of a GTM solution. How do we take a concept like Starburst promoting the Ice House, which in the data analytics world is the iceberg table format plus our engine creates an Ice House. It's a fun marketing thing. The summer of Ice House this summer. How do we get the clouds to lean into that and do joint things with us with their different service teams or product things? So it's differentiated. We're not just another partner. And so that's the first kind of like branch out. And then you start to test those different solution areas. Would it make more sense if this looked like an OEM or a white label and things that we could actually look to embed? Is the customer asking, wouldn't it be awesome if it was just one solution? And so then we go after, different routes to market, whether that's OEM or put into the different consoles, whether that's Google or AWS or Azure, to find a better way to get in front of their customers faster.
And because you've built this really great brand inside of the cloud partnership, you now can leverage that as a platform to engage with their ecosystem. And they can help promote and up-level and elevate you into those partnerships as well to hopefully get those partnerships running faster than if you were out there trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, and I think the next iteration, I don't think anyone's truly figured it out yet. How do you get like a tri-party truly going? Whether that's Accenture plus Starburst plus AWS, or that's Starburst plus some ISV plus a Azure, right? And then truly start to put solutions out collaboratively that are consumable via something like the marketplace. I think that's going to be the next evolution, especially as we see technology superpowers go more and more vertical focused. You'll get things that are encapsulated as vertical use cases in that domain. I think that's where we're going, and that's what excites me about the next evolution of where all this goes.
Some people talk about it as bundling or bundles, these more collaborative solutions, these managed service solutions. And I think maybe that's a little bit why, like Microsoft for a couple of years now, they've had the ability in Partner Center to invite partners to their opportunities. And you can do a try co-sell opportunity together. But if you can't sell it that way and you can't incent it that way, and it doesn't light up on anyone's metrics that way, then it's a nice to have. So I think as we see that capability unlock in the marketplace, then quickly following, we'll need that capability unlocked in co-sell so that we can continue to, in lockstep, co-sell and sell through the marketplace our joint solutions.
I think when we forget sometimes, I think we're all guilty of this in the alliances world, is like, how does the customer want to buy? Should we do a better job collectively understanding that part first and then build the systems or solutions backwards into that? So sometimes, a new feature comes out from one of the cloud marketplaces, we all jump on. But is that even what the customer is asking for? Sometimes we don't know.
I'm going to take it back to your pillar, Boone, because you talked about a couple important things from a corporate development perspective where we need to measure that as well. So not only the partnerships and the investments, co-sell and marketplace, we constantly hear ISVs asking us for like, how do we measure success here? And what's that look like? And we've got our own thoughts, but from your perspective, these are new routes to market. So what metrics do you look at as most important to you?
We actually MBO on it. So we do a quarterly payout. So we assign targets, and it's not necessarily like certain people we want to get in front of. Maybe it is like we want to get in front of this level of person inside of this cloud, this quarter. That is going to be MBO'd for someone on my team or myself, depending on the situation. Or it's, hey, we have this strategic thing moving. we need to get it to X by the end of the quarter. Because we know this is a 1 year, 2 year sales cycle to get a more embedded motion going. How do we move the right thing forward that quarter? And so we really do bring it all the way down to that level and comp on it and track that these things are getting done across the full year cycle, but on a quarterly basis.
It's embedded in your goaling, because we always talk about the salespeople and we need to compensate them, but it should be in the leadership team as well. And with alliances, if it's something that is truly meaningful and a route to market that the company really wants to pursue.
So our goal as a company is to get to 50% of our booked revenue, renewals, net new, expansion, to be through the marketplaces. That's up from 30 to 40% over the last couple of years. So it's another tick in the right direction.
Yeah, that's huge. That doesn't come from a lot of manual processes either, right? So you did all this in kind of an establishing foundation phase, building adoption, but now you've scaled success. And I assume you've done that through some automation. Can you tell us about how did you automate or ingrain these processes into the rhythm of your business today?
Yeah, it's similar to co-sell, putting it in Salesforce. That's where the sellers all live, and making that flow through the Tackle platform. So our ability to track all these disparate, whether it's an offer going out, being accepted, a co-sell process, it all goes through the Tackle platform, and it simplifies our view of the world. So we're feeding our data, whether it's sales data or product ingestion data for billing, right into Tackle, and then it gets distributed out to the appropriate cloud. And ultimately, it lets us scale with less people. And that's the whole goal, as a Series D startup, right? We want to do more with less all the time.
So are you enabling your sellers to request a co-sell? Are you doing more of like an alliance-led co-sell motion?
Yeah. So as part of that stage 1 to stage 2 process, it's the sellers. But ultimately, as we discussed, we got to enable them to understand why. And then we see the really good percentage of sharing that we want above, 60, 70% of our deals get shared any given year, pipeline wise. And that's really good. And especially considering like we have some customers that only buy on-prem. So we're not necessarily sharing those deals with clouds because it's not applicable to what they're doing. And so it's really the automated process for the sellers and sales led.
Are your sellers requesting for a private offer or requesting to go through the marketplace and starting to create that initial private offer? Or are you using it more of like the sellers raising their hand, the customer's interested in private offer, and then that kicks over to an operations team who's going to actually do the marketplace private offer?
So typically the seller engages the customer in the AWS account team, one or both of them. Hey, does marketplace make sense to you, right? As the customer, maybe this is pre-assigned budget that you can tap into from an AWS perspective. Maybe they know the CFO has XYZ initiative to put so much revenue from ISVs through the marketplace. And then they'll come back to my team, Cloud Alliances team, and or their deal desk operations team when it's an appropriate time to start looking at how should we package up this private offer? Is this a SaaS deal? We still have an enterprise software listing. We start to look at how is this going to actually be transacted in which cloud, and make sure we're ahead of it. So, if the deal happens to be the day at the end of the quarter, we don't run into any snags that we were not prepared for.
Got it. You were talking about 50% of your booked revenue going through the cloud marketplace. I think you also said you have a metric around actionable co-sell. What is actionable co-sell?
To be candid, is 50% of booked revenue through the marketplace and or actionable co-sell. So co-sell, not just for the sake of I put it in the system and it's there. We got it into the system, it's tracked, and we've actually gotten something out of the cloud. That could be, the AWS seller introduces us to an executive we didn't have access to. They help us map out the procurement process. They do a technical review with us and the customer in person. There's a list of things we've actually created that are actionable co-sell that we do actually comp on. And so like that's part of it is like not every customer is going to use the marketplace. Yes, it's super important to a lot of people, but even some very large cloud shops don't use the marketplace. And so there has to be this balance of we're doing the right thing no matter how the customer is going to procure. And part of that is how do we get value to move our deals faster?
I love that. And when we're also working with other ISVs, we're like, how should we do this? And these are the things that it takes to be successful. We know we need to do all of these things. There's only so much time in the day to get to all of those things. So who are the best folks on our teams to be focused on these activities, knowing that we need to do all these activities and have this comprehensive approach? You guys invest in using our co-sell managed services so that the co-sell operations can be handled by the co-sell operations team. That then frees up your team so that you can actually get to engaging in the field, doing co-sell at the field level, and tracking actionable co-sell.
Yeah, and it's a super important part for us to be able to scale. Like most companies over the last couple of years, we're not adding a ton of people all the time. And so it's how do we continue to grow revenue while also not adding too many people? And that's been a huge driver for us. And we view it as collaboratively the Cloud Alliances team at Starburst plus the Tackle co-sell and marketplace teams. We provide programs to our field sellers and field partner people. So we have field people that are responsible for partner activities, and they're ultimately the receivers of the programs that we deploy to them, whether that's co-sell, marketplace, credits, marketing. We view it as a collaborative effort to deliver those programs, no matter where that field seller and partner person are.
I think you're hitting on a key part of the recipe, which is you have to have the right mindset around this entire approach to make a statement that 50% of booked revenue, that's a significant number. A number like that means Starburst is really seeing the value in their cloud partnerships as a meaningful route to market. And in order to unlock cloud go-to-market, you really have to put yourself in the cloud partners market. What do you mean by that?
It's interesting when you have new leader come in, or someone that's worked in a SaaS company before, and they're like, "Yep, we work with a whole bunch of partners. We work with the clouds, we work with the ISVs. What makes the clouds different?" Maybe they don't think they are different. They're just another partner in the tech ecosystem. Where they are different is they're truly a market, right? They don't just make technology like the rest of us ISVs. They actually are where everyone goes to buy and deploy their services that generate money from a customer lens. And so it's not just being a good partner to be a good partner. It's be a good partner to have access to their market. So it's a totally different dynamic. The fourth market, that's not one of the three clouds is on-prem for us. And so we view them as four different markets. Yes, three of them are actually clouds, but they are their own market. And they think and operate differently depending on which cloud it is. And on-prem is obviously different than all three of those.
Your customers are in one or more of those markets. So you have to put yourself in that market where your customers are in order to best serve and support your customers. Okay, Boone, any final thoughts on what others can learn from your journey with cloud alliances at Rubrik and Starburst?
Stay focused. I think your little quote, the infinite cycle, the Simon Sinek quote, is super important. We forget it sometimes and we stop enabling for a couple quarters and then it bites us in the butt. So that always has to stay true. And then make sure your executives are bought in and understand the value they're getting back, right? Everyone's going to have a different value across the different clouds, but the better that you align on that and report on that, the more support you're going to get to try to go do more unique things as you do the corporate development and product alignment pieces.
I love how you broke it out into those different pillars too. So it keeps it simple. So hopefully if you've been listening, you can take away your own pillars, or you can use Boone's successful pillars as kind of a foundational guiding principles, if you will, on what you can do for your own channel for cloud go-to-market.
Thank you, Boone. It was such a pleasure to have you on our podcast. I so appreciate your time. I thoroughly enjoy working with you. I think we've been working together now 7, 8 years. So it's just been so fun to, just be in this journey together, learning, sharing, and challenging each other.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, like pushing into the next evolution of it, there'll be something new and we'll have to collectively do that, as an alliances community.
And Tackle's here to help and be a part of that with you every step of the way. Okay, Patrick, I love aha moments. What was one of your aha moments after this episode with Boone and our conversation that we had with him?
First of all, can I say a word for the moose in the background? I love that photo.
I love that moose.
Yeah, I need to get it in my pond back here. Well, one of the biggest things for me was how he took his lessons learned from Rubrik and tried to immediately go and apply those in Starburst, and quickly realized that the product fit within the cloud provider was so different that he was going to have to take a different approach with a different cloud. And so to me, the big aha moment was this definitely, as we know, isn't a cookie cutter exercise. You can't just take what works in one ISV and then put it in another. You have to evaluate your product fit. And to me, like that's always overlooked. And even I'm guilty of that. So the way they looked at how they fit their product into a particular cloud was super important to follow. And I hope everybody takes away something from that.
One of the very first questions I always ask that ISV is like, tell me about your product. Do we have product market fit? Are you driving consumption, or are you driving metrics that matter to that cloud? Are you going to be relevant to them? It's so important, because if you aren't, this is going to be a really hard route to market for you. I also loved how Boone was talking about it's a mindset. Like you have to think about this cloud partnership as its own market, and you've got to go put yourself into Microsoft's market. You got to go put yourself into AWS's market. You got to go put yourself into Google's market.
Not just a channel too, right? I push ISVs to like, this is a channel, you need to invest in it as a channel, but also we need to think about it, investing in a specific market. It's not your market that you think you're always selling into. It's this cloud provider's market. So that's a good point.
And then when you go into that market, like you have to do a lot of things. It's a multifaceted approach. Like it's not one route to market or one activity. There are many things we have to do in order to be successful in this market. And I've got to go do it again and a little bit different, because they're a little different. Even though they're all cloud providers, they're all unique in their own ways.
Fantastic conversation today. Unlock Cloud Go-to-Market with Boone Quesnel of Starburst. I am your co-host, Patrick Riley.
I'm your co-host, Erin Feiger.
And thanks for listening.
So pull up a chair, grab a notebook, and join us as we share the essential stages of the maturity model to start, optimize, and grow your company's revenue using the cloud. For more resources on executing your cloud go-to-market strategy, you can visit our website at tackle.io.